The air conditioning in the boardroom bites at my bare arms, a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature control. It's the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, numbing you just before the shock hits. I stand perfectly still, my smile fixed, a mask I've been perfecting for months. Across the polished mahogany table, framed by floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the indifferent city skyline, I see him. His tie is slightly askew, a detail I used to fix without thinking. His hair is thinner at the temples than I remember, stress or time finally catching up. He's talking, his voice the low rumble that once soothed me to sleep, now just a sound I recognize. He's laughing, a confident, easy sound. He hasn't seen me yet. His boss, Mr. Abernathy, a man built like a friendly brick wall with a booming laugh, gestures towards me. And finally, I want you all to meet the new partner I've been telling you about, Abernathy says, his voice cutting through the room's polite chatter. She's going to revolutionize our approach to, well, everything really. My smile doesn't waver. My eyes lock onto him. He turns, his smile still in place, ready to greet the new colleague. His gaze sweeps over me, polite, distant. And then it hits him. The smile falters. The color drains from his face, leaving it a ghastly white. His eyes, usually so guarded, are wide with disbelief, then horror. His mouth opens slightly, but no sound comes out. He freezes, a statue carved in ice, right there in the middle of his confident stride, his easy laughter.
He sees me.
Not the woman he left crying on the floor of our empty house. Not the wife he discarded with cruel words. He sees me, here,
now,
introduced by his boss, as his partner. The silence stretches, thick and heavy, pulling the air from the room. Everyone is looking at him, then at me, sensing the sudden, sharp snap in the atmosphere. He stands frozen, a deer caught in headlights, in the place he felt most invincible. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, it helps me more than you know. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Not for him anyway. For me, I wasn't sure how it would end for a long time. There was a time I thought the ending was just silence. An empty house. A quiet, slow fade to gray. We had a life. That's what I called it. A comfortable existence built on shared history and what felt like mutual respect, maybe even love once. I met him in college. Young, full of plans, both of us. He was ambitious, driven, charming. I guess I was the steady one. The anchor. I believed in him. Completely. We got married in a small church, promises echoing in the quiet space. We bought a little house, painted the walls together, argued over furniture placement. We built a life brick by brick, year by year. My career took a backseat. His was the one on the fast track. He had the big ideas, the corporate ladder to climb. I was happy to support that. I managed the home, the finances, the logistics of our life. I was his soft place to land, his confidant, the one who listened to the long, boring stories about office politics and celebrated every promotion like it was my own. Maybe that was the mistake. Making his victories mine. Losing myself in the reflection of his rising star. He moved up quickly. The little house was traded for a bigger one. The old car for a new one. His hours grew longer. The man I married started to change. The charming ambition morphed into something colder, sharper. He was always on his phone, always stressed, always focused on the next deal, the next rung. Our late-night talks dwindled. Dinners became silent affairs, interrupted by emails and calls. I told myself it was just stress. The price of success. I tried harder. Cooked his favorite meals, made sure the house was perfect, listened patiently when he did talk, which was mostly about work. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, always trying not to add to his burden, always trying to be the supportive wife he needed. Looking back, I see the cracks now. The missed anniversaries, the faraway look in his eyes, the way he flinched when I touched him. I made excuses. For him. For us. Because the alternative was too terrifying. Admitting that the foundation wasn't just cracked, but crumbling. The end, when it came, wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow bleed, then a swift, brutal severing. I found the messages first. Innocent at a glance, quickly becoming sickeningly intimate. A colleague. Younger, no doubt just as ambitious as he was. It wasn't just sex. It was shared jokes, shared frustrations about work I used to listen to, shared dreams of a future that no longer included me. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. There was no tearful confession, no desperate plea for forgiveness. Just a sigh. A world-weary sigh, like I was an inconvenience, a problem to be dealt with efficiently. "It's over," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I'm leaving." I stood there, holding his phone like it was a snake, the blue light illuminating the wreckage of my life. Tears streamed down my face, silent and helpless. I remember asking him, "Was any of it real?" "Us. Everything." He looked at me then, not with pity, but with something like disdain. "Real enough at the time," he said, turning away to pack a bag. "But people change." I changed. That hurt. But what came next? That burned. He paused at the door, suitcase in hand. He looked back at me, still standing there, shattered in the hallway of the home we built. He gave a short, bitter laugh. "Don't worry," he said, the words dripping with condescension. "You'll get by. Eventually. But let's be honest, you'll never find another man like me." The door closed behind him. The click echoed in the sudden, vast silence of the house. "You'll never find another man like me." The words replayed in my head like a broken record. Over and over. In the empty kitchen, in the silent bedroom, in the hollow echo of my own footsteps. Grief hit first. A tidal wave of despair that threatened to drown me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Getting out of bed felt like lifting a mountain. Friends called, their voices laced with sympathy I couldn't bear. My mother offered platitudes that felt like nails in a coffin. The house felt wrong. Every object a memory, twisted and poisoned. The sofa where we watched movies, the kitchen table where we planned vacations, the bedroom where we just existed, apparently. Then came the practicalities. Lawyers. Paperwork. Dividing assets that suddenly felt tainted. He was ruthless. Businesslike. Treating our life together like a failed merger, focused only on minimizing his losses and maximizing his gains. He fought over things that meant nothing to him, only because he knew they meant something to me. He tried to minimize spousal support, arguing that I was perfectly capable of working, conveniently forgetting how I'd put my own aspirations on hold for over a decade for our life, his career. The words came back. "You'll never find another man like me." He was right in one sense. I didn't want another man like him. Not ever. The thought repulsed me. The thought of needing anyone else to validate me, to provide for me, to complete me. That was the lie I had lived, the cage I had built around myself with his help. But the sting of his arrogance, his absolute certainty that he was irreplaceable, that I was somehow less capable without him, that burrowed deep. It festered. Despair slowly started to curdle into something else. Something cold. Something hard. I was sitting on the floor of my living room, surrounded by boxes of his things the lawyers had finally cleared out when the shift happened. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that made the empty spaces look even bigger. I felt utterly alone, adrift. And then I thought of his face when he said those words. That smug, self-satisfied expression. The utter dismissal of my worth. And something snapped. It wasn't anger, not the hot, wild kind. It was a cold, clear fury. A determination so sharp it felt like a physical ache. I wouldn't just survive. I wouldn't just get by. I would prove him wrong. Not by finding someone else, but by becoming someone he couldn't dismiss. Someone he couldn't ignore. Someone he couldn't possibly replace. "You'll never find another man like me." Okay. Challenge accepted. Maybe I didn't need a man. Maybe I needed to become someone he'd regret walking away from every single day for the rest of his life. I knew his world. I knew the corporate landscape he thrived in. I'd listened to him talk about it for years. The The players, the politics, the opportunities, the vulnerabilities. I knew the name of his company, its structure, its ambitions. I even knew his boss's name, Mr. Abernathy, a man he both admired and feared. My own professional background was dusty. Before him, I'd worked in marketing, specifically in strategic partnerships. I'd been good at it. Creative. Resourceful. But I'd let it atrophy. The idea was audacious. Maybe even insane. But it took root, growing rapidly in the newly fertile ground of my resolve. What if I didn't just re-enter the workforce? What if I entered his world? Not as a competitor on his level, but as something he wouldn't see coming. Something higher. It wouldn't be easy. I needed skills, connections, capital. I was starting from scratch, older, bruised, and carrying the weight of failure. But his words were the fuel. Every time doubt crept in, every time I felt overwhelmed, I heard him. "You'll never find another man like me." The insult became my mantra. I started small. Online courses. Updating my resume. Reaching out to old contacts. Swallowing my pride. Most were sympathetic, some offered platitudes. A few gave genuine advice. It was slow, humbling work. My savings weren't vast. The divorce settlement was finalized, barely enough to keep the house for a while, if I was careful. I had to make smart choices. Every penny counted. I took a part-time job, something simple and mindless, just to keep cash flowing and my mind from spiraling. At night, I studied. I networked. I researched his company, its industry, its market gaps. I learned about Mr. Abernathy, his background, his business philosophy. He was a man who valued innovation, bold ideas, and disruptors. He'd taken the company in new directions, sometimes controversially, but always with vision. He wasn't afraid to take risks on unconventional talent if he saw potential. That was my angle. I couldn't compete with a lifetime of climbing the corporate ladder he'd already ascended. I needed to come in sideways. With something new, something valuable that he needed. I identified a gap in the market his company was overlooking. An emerging sector, high risk, high reward. It needed a fresh approach, a partner willing to dive in and build something from the ground up, leveraging their existing infrastructure, but operating with entrepreneurial agility. This became my focus. I poured everything into understanding this niche. I developed a business plan, refining it over and over. It was ambitious. It required significant investment and a strong corporate partner to succeed. A corporate partner exactly like his company. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was building my future, my revenge, on the very foundation of his world. Finding an investor who would back me, a woman with a decade-long gap in her resume and a risky idea, was a brutal process. I faced skepticism, polite rejections, and outright dismissal. I heard echoes of his words in their hesitant questions, their doubts about my capabilities. There were days I wanted to give up. Days the loneliness was a physical pain, and the weight of trying to rebuild everything felt crushing. I'd sit in the empty house, the silence amplifying my fears, and hear his voice mocking me. "You'll never find another man like me," and I'd get back to work. His contempt was my inexhaustible fuel. I pitched my plan to anyone who would listen. Angel investors, venture capitalists, even old contacts from business school who were now in finance. Most said no. Some offered patronizing advice. But one didn't. An older investor, semi-retired, who saw something in my presentation, in my determination, in the quiet fire behind my eyes. Maybe he'd been underestimated once, too. He saw the potential in the market I'd identified, and he saw the drive in me. He agreed to provide seed funding, enough to get started, enough to build a prototype, enough to look legitimate. But it wasn't enough for the full-scale launch my plan required. For that, I still needed a major partner. A corporate backer. Mr. Abernathy. His company. My plan was simple on paper. Build the foundation of my business, gain traction, then pitch it to Abernathy as a strategic partnership, an acquisition really but framed as a synergistic venture. His company would get a foothold in a lucrative new market without the internal bureaucracy, and I would get the resources, the validation, and the opportunity to step into their world at a significant level. The challenge was getting to Abernathy. He was notoriously difficult to reach, guarded by layers of assistants and gatekeepers. And even if I reached him, pitching a partnership that would essentially make me a high-level executive or a partner within his organization was a massive leap. It felt impossible. But I had come too far to stop. I used the seed funding to build my team, a small group of equally determined, smart individuals who believed in the vision. We worked tirelessly, operating lean, pushing boundaries. We achieved early success, enough to prove the concept, enough to build a small but undeniable track record. Now, I had something tangible to show Abernathy. Not just an idea, but a working model, generating revenue, with clear growth potential. Getting the meeting took months of strategic networking, leveraging every contact, calling in every favor. I didn't mention my ex-husband's name. Not ever. My pitch had to stand on its own merits. Finally, I got a lead. A mutual acquaintance. A connection I'd almost forgotten I had. Knew Abernathy's executive assistant. A carefully worded email, a summary of my business and its synergy with his company's goals, a few strategically placed words from my acquaintance, and I got a reply. Not a meeting with Abernathy himself, but with a senior VP. A test run. I nailed the meeting. I was prepared, confident, armed with data and projections.
The VP was impressed.
He saw the potential. This led to another meeting and another. I climbed the ladder from the outside, each step bringing me closer to the top, closer to Abernathy. The possibility that my ex might find out, might somehow intercept this, was a constant low-level fear. But I operated in a different part of the corporate ecosystem initially. His focus was internal politics and existing structures. Mine was the external market, innovation the future. Our paths didn't cross.
Not yet.
After weeks of meetings, presentations, due diligence, and intense negotiations, the offer came. Not an acquisition. A partnership. A new division, led by me, with significant autonomy, reporting directly to Abernathy himself. And the title,
Partner.
It was everything I had worked for, everything I had risked. It placed me not just in his company, but at a level above his own operational role, reporting to the same man he did, but with a different kind of influence, a direct line to the top. The paperwork was complex, filled with legal jargon. I signed my name on the dotted line, my hand steady. It wasn't just a business deal. It was a reclaiming of myself, a transformation fueled by pain and defiance. Abernathy wanted to make an announcement, a formal introduction to the senior leadership team. My team was smaller, agile, and we would continue to operate somewhat independently, but this partnership integrated us into the corporate structure at the highest level. He scheduled the meeting. A boardroom presentation. All the key players would be there, including my ex-husband. I knew he would be there. It was unavoidable. This was his world, his level. The thought twisted my stomach into knots. Years of pain, of struggle, culminating in this moment. How would he react? Would he be angry? Shocked? Would he try to undermine me? I spent days rehearsing scenarios in my head, preparing my responses, steeling myself. I practiced maintaining a cool, professional demeanor.
No emotion.
Just business. The day arrived. I dressed carefully. Not in power suits that felt like borrowed armor, but in clothes that felt like me, elevated, confident, comfortable in my own skin. I walked into the glass and steel tower that housed his company, the building I had driven past countless times, picking him up, dropping him off, waiting. It felt different walking in as an equal. More than equal in this specific context. I was early. I waited in a small reception area outside the boardroom, the hum of corporate activity a distant thrum. My heart pounded, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. This wasn't just a business meeting. It was the final act, the culmination of a journey that started on a living room floor, surrounded by shadows and despair. Abernathy's assistant came to get me, a pleasant woman who had no idea of the history about to collide. She led me down a short corridor towards the boardroom doors. I could hear voices inside, the murmur of conversation, a laugh, his laugh. My carefully constructed calm wavered for a second. My breath hitched. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked in. The room fell silent as I entered. Abernathy was already there, standing near the head of the table, a few other senior executives seated. He smiled warmly and gestured me forward. "Everyone, thank you for being here," he boomed, his voice filling the space. "As you know, we've been working on bringing some fresh energy and innovation into the company." He continued speaking, but I barely heard him. My eyes scanned the faces around the table, familiar names from the stories my ex used to tell. And then I saw him. He was standing near the far end of the table, talking to a colleague, a confident smile on his face. He hadn't seen me yet. Abernathy reached the point in his introduction. "And finally, I want you all to meet the new partner I've been telling you about," he said, his voice full of genuine enthusiasm. "She's going to revolutionize our approach to, well, everything really." He gestured towards me. My smile was fixed, unwavering. My eyes locked onto him. He turned, that same confident smile still in place, ready to greet the new colleague. His gaze swept over me, polite, distant. And then recognition dawned, followed instantly by disbelief. And then horror. The smile didn't just falter, it vanished as if wiped away by an unseen hand. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, ashen gray. His eyes, usually so controlled, so calculating, were wide, revealing a raw, naked shock I had never seen before. His mouth opened, just slightly, a silent gasp, but no sound emerged. He froze, utterly still, his body rigid. Right there in the middle of the room, he considered his domain.
He saw me.
Not the tearful, discarded wife. Not the broken woman he'd left behind. He saw me standing tall, introduced by his boss as his equal. No, not equal. A partner. A principal. Reporting directly to the man he reported to. The silence stretched, vibrating with unspoken shock. Every eye in the room was on him, on his utterly stunned face. The confident man, the man who walked away with a smirk and cruel words, was a statue of pure, unadulterated shock. My heart wasn't pounding anymore.
It was calm, steady.
There was no triumph on my face, no visible hint of the years of pain and the grueling fight it took to get here. Just a cool, professional demeanor. A slight, polite nod in his direction. Abernathy, oblivious or perhaps subtly enjoying the drama he'd unknowingly created, continued. "Please join me in welcoming." He paused for effect, turning fully towards me. I stepped forward, my smile still in place, offering my hand to Abernathy. The moment stretched, suspended. My ex-husband remained frozen, his eyes glued to me, his expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. The air crackled with the unspoken history between us, a history only he, I, and maybe Abernathy, though I doubted it, understood. Abernathy clasped my hand warmly. "Welcome," he said. "We're thrilled to have you." I shook his hand, my gaze still briefly on my ex. He hadn't moved. He looked utterly blindsided, as if the floor had vanished beneath him. His arrogant prophecy echoed in my mind. "You'll never find another man like me." He was right. I hadn't found another man. I had found myself. And in doing so, I had become something far more powerful than I ever could have been standing beside him. The meeting proceeded. I was introduced to the others, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries. All the while, I could feel his eyes on me. He eventually moved stiffly, taking a seat. He didn't speak. He barely seemed to breathe. He watched me, his face a mask of shock and bewildered fury. When it came time for me to present my vision for the new division, I stood at the head of the table, confident, articulate. I outlined the strategy, the market analysis, the projected growth. I spoke about innovation, leadership, and building a successful future. My voice was strong and clear, a stark contrast to the silence that had once defined my life after he left. He sat there, forced to listen. forced to watch me command the room, to see others around the table nod in agreement with my plans, to hear Abernathy praise my foresight and expertise. The man who thought I was incapable, the man who had dismissed my worth, was now witness to my undeniable success, delivered directly into the heart of the world he believed only he could navigate. The meeting ended. People came up to me, offering congratulations, asking questions. I handled it all with polite professionalism. I didn't seek him out. I didn't need to. His reaction was enough. More than enough. As people started to disperse, I saw him hesitate. He finally approached me, his face still pale, his eyes darting nervously. He looked smaller than I remembered. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate attempt at composure that failed utterly. "You," he stammered, the word barely a whisper. "How?" I looked at him, the man who had broken me and inadvertently forged me anew. There was no anger left, only a vast, quiet space where the pain used to be, and a deep sense of peace. "Hello," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It's partner now. Or you can just call me by my name." His jaw worked, but no words came out. The silence between us was different this time. Not the silence of my despair, but the silence of his defeat. He had mocked me, confident in his superiority, certain I would wither without him. But his cruelty had planted a seed of strength I never knew I possessed. And I had cultivated it, watered it with tears and sweat, and grown something formidable in the ruins he left behind. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His face, frozen in that expression of shock and regret, was all the victory I needed. He was right. I hadn't found another man like him. I had found the woman he tried to break, and she had become someone infinitely stronger, someone who had built her own empire, right in the shadow of his. I turned away from him, towards Abernathy, who was waiting to walk me out. As I left the boardroom, I didn't look back. The past was behind me. My future was in the skyscrapers outside the window, in the challenges ahead, in the life I had built, stone by painful stone, word by mocking word. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.